बहुत सुंदर है. It's a beautiful poem, obituary, full of irony. Whose death he is mourning? That figure who has been a patriarchal head, who has never loved his children, who has forever asserted his power, and what power? Useless. At the end of his life, he has left debt for the family. Uski obituary. This is idea. Okay, so these are the characteristics of modern poetry in English. But look at the time span. It was only for 30 years. And you would be surprised that they did not even wait for 30 years that the characteristics would change, the trend would change. ये गलत है ऐसा नहीं बोलते हैं, but इसमें there is a foreign adaptation. You agree? It was a ready-made aesthetic of whom? Eliot. It did not work for long. It really did not work for long. For reasons. क्या reasons हो सकते हैं? Again, compare with English scenario in England. In 1960, England entered the postmodern era. There was a reaction against modernism. When India had adapted modernism, there was a reaction against modernism. A reaction against modernist sensibility had set in the 40s and 50s, and in the 60s, England now turned post-modern. अब क्या होगा? हम तो ये एलियट की इन्फ्लुएंस लेके चलते हैं. So that was one thing which troubled the Indians. कि ये तो कुछ उल्टा हो गया. We have given up past, but is it worth giving up? Is it really worth giving up? So the result is, even in the modernist era before 1918, even in the modernist era, there are poets who turn their back from modernism, who turn away from modernism, in the sense that, अब करें क्या? पहले तो लिख लिया, it's a time to change, but whatever we have arrived at is also not pleasant. What is the solution? And I mentioned the first volume of Ezekiel, Time to Change. The last volume, he in fact published 7 volumes of poetry. The last volume is called Hymns. What is hymns? Prayers, prayer songs, hymns. There is irony, yes, because modernism continues, but prayers, hymns in darkness. Look at the title. Somewhere there is a regret. There is the poems, it's a beautiful collection. There is a spiritual quest in Ezekiel's poetry, which is not modernist. Rejection of past, उसमें कहीं पे भी set नहीं हुई. There is a spiritual quest in Ezekiel's poetry. There is a loss of tradition mentioned in a poem. Kamla Das की एक कविता है, My Grandmother's House, where she remembers her grandmother's house and regrets the present times. She longs. There is a longing. There is a desire to stop this rejection of past. So they seem to turn towards what? Tradition? No, not altogether tradition. Let us call it Indianism. Modernism is an English aesthetic. Let us turn to our own ism, our own theory, and that is poets. Even in the modernist era, they turned to Indianism. Professor, My Grandmother's House, so many poems are there where they think of this. So poets seem to return from modernity, and they want to find their roots, their identity in their roots. Loss of identity, we talked about it. Loss of identity was a problem, was a challenge for modernist, was a regret for modernist poet. But then they realized, अगर ढूंढनी ही है तो अपने में ढूंढो. कहाँ ढूंढोगे? Roots में. My backward place is where I am. Ezekiel says. In 7th volume, there is a poem called Background Casually. A background casually में he describes himself. He also starts describing himself right from his childhood. Look at the first line. A poet, rascal, clown was born. Is it a normal child? No. He is not born like a normal child. He is a poet, a rascal, clown was born. He always sees, because he was a Jew, but from generations settled in India, he sees himself right from childhood as isolated, alienated from his background, the community at large, society. But towards the end, he realizes, when I go abroad, they call me Indian. And in India, I refuse to call myself Indian, then who am I? In abroad, they call me Indian. In India, I myself find me different from Indians. So who am I? And the end line, the last line is, my backward place is where I am. Whatever my place is, but it is my place. He accepts his Indian identity. So, poets turned away from modernism. And now, the list is very long of the poets who belong to the modernist era. There was an exhaustive writer, exhaustive output of modernist poetry. Exhaustive output of modernist poetry, starting with Ezekiel, Ramanujan, Don Morris, Adil Jusawala, the Bombay poets, Eunice Jesus, and so many. Kamla Das, even the women poets. 1980. I'm coming to the post-modern era. 1980, finally, I will not say that the process of Indianization is over. No. But 1980, a new aesthetic, a new spirit of writing sets in. Subjects remain the same. What is postmodernism? Yesterday Chikanand has discussed it in a great detail. But in Indian context, what postmodernism would be? No, it can be viewed thematically in two ways. A continuation as well as a rejection of modernist sensibility. A continuation and rejection. I'll give you a very simple example. कि किसी को बहुत challenges, there are so many challenges in life. पहली बार रोओगे, दूसरी बार रोओगे, तीसरी बार रोओगे, चौथी बार क्या करोगे? चलता है यार, this is life. Accept it. This is postmodernism. This is postmodernism. Accept it. No God. Hardy said funeral, then God's funeral. Hardy said God's funeral. He lamented कि भाई loss of religious faith नहीं है, कोई बात नहीं है, उसके बगैर भी जी तो सकते ही हो. This is postmodernism. But there is an underlying disillusionment. Modernism में there is a possibility कि भाई कहीं पे सुधार तो हो सकता है. but when you accept it, there is no possibility. The underlying disgust, disillusionment is there. We are studying, I don't know whether it's true. Agar Shahid, एक कविता है, postcard from Kashmir. Postcard from Kashmir. They describe life in fragments. Giu Patel, Ada Shahid Ali, Arun Kolakar. These are all postmodern writers. So at this stage, when we discuss postmodernism, we cannot go into the exact postmodernism. What we can discuss it just superficially, a few themes and techniques. So postmodernism, along with irony, adapted to techniques like parody. Parody pata hai sabko. What is parody? The original remains as it is, but based on the original, you make similar kind of piece where you ridicule. Parody laughs mostly. There are certain jokes कि the film stars or the singers were asked to, singers were invited at a dinner party and then they were asked to demand anything they want in their songs. किसी को पूरी चाहिए, किसी को गुलाब जामुन चाहिए, तो बोले गा के बताओ. This is parody. Another technique is pastiche. Pastiche is also copying, but it is without any emotional involvement. It's just a copy. Pastiche. Without approval or disapproval, without laughter or pity. Pastiche. So parody, pastiche, irony, these are a few techniques. Then poetry about poetry. The art of writing. They have written essays, poetry on the art of writing. Poetry about poetry. So that is a peculiarity of postmodern era. And fragmentism is there. Pieces, which is there in modernism also. But here it is there with little complaints. Vikram Sheth, Aga Shahid Ali, Imtiaz Dharkar, these are a few postmodern poets. And since modernism was only a span of 30 years, so a poet would not stop after, a modernist poet did not stop writing after 1980. There are a few modernist poets who easily shifted to postmodernism, like British Nandi, like Jayant Mahapatra, who is still alive. In 2023, they shifted from modernism to postmodern sensibility very easily. Arun Kolakar, Jayant Mahapatra, these poets became postmoderns, and of course the new generation was there. Vikram Sheth, who experimented the first verse novel, The Suitable Boy, The Golden Gate. These are the postmodern poets. And till date, Indian poetry in English, and then of course today a new segment has been added to Indian poetry in English. Can anyone say? Diaspora writings. Diaspora writings. And that is a very powerful segment. Indians settled abroad writing poetry, maybe on Indian subjects, but Indians settled abroad. Diaspora writings are they are a new and very promising subject for research, for further studies. They are more prominently seen in fiction, prose writings, drama, but they are there in poetry as well. Okay, so with this, I end my discussion and open it up for your comments, your suggestions. You can add if you feel like any examples, any questions. Please do so. Please come.
She has not taken a drop of water during the last 1.5 hours, more than 1.5 hours. Please. It was wonderful, I think. Let's have a big round of applause. For questions and answers. If you have any query, any doubt regarding the session, yes. Do you have any question? Do you have, or you want to add something or Indian English poetry? Right, such a huge field. और उसको 1 घंटे में इतना सारा कवर करना है, ये नहीं. Yes, absolutely. Is there any question or should we proceed? Now question from teachers. If you have any doubt, any query, or if you want to add also, if you want to. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, ma'am, I would like to know about who are some 21st century poets that we should look up to or read about.
See, 21st century, things have diverged so much. Number one, it is, though and we are discussing Indian poetry in English with pride here, the fact remains that 21st century is not able to produce any major poets, and Chitra, I think you can correct me, no new researches have been coming up, new research subjects have not been on poetry at all. Still there are a few names, they are basically, एक तो वो उत्तम, एक मोना सिंह है, एक there are only a few names which could be cited. Jayanta Mahapatra is a powerful name, still remains. Vikram Sheth is still substantial a name. Agha Shahid Ali, any of the postmodern poets. The Anita Nair is very promising. Is a journalist and a very promising poetess. She's a journalist. You see, I won't say problem, but the phenomenon, what has happened is that in 20th century, professionals in other disciplines write literature. The demarcating line between literature and popular writing has become blurry, and that is why one of my students was looking for neo-colonial writings. So Gurudas Charan, the prose works, but Rohington Misbil, it is very clearly identifiable. The prose writers, the fiction writers, the theatre writers. But if you really intend to go for research, study of 21st century poets, you have names restricted to a particular segment, like Mona Singh, like I'm forgetting the name, very dominantly, starting from you. No, not Nina Alexander, the Dhruv. I'm forgetting, he is a recent poet who can be considered. But whatever little I have read, I think Anita Nair and a few such writers, Ada Shankar, India's Darker, would be good names to cite. You mean the identity crisis in the modern age, isn't it? The modernist era. Identity crisis is faced twice in general in the canon. Identity of Indian poetry in English. That was one problem. But now when I talk of identity crisis, so I hope you mean in the early 20th century or in the latter part of the 20th century, the identity crisis. Identity crisis is कि you want to be called a proud Indian. You want to go before the world as a proud Indian because you are privileged, because now you are a free country, because in Indian setup we have our own reasons to claim an identity. In England, the identity crisis was to be an individual. The modern aesthetic in India faces double-layered identity crisis. One, you want to be called a proud Indian and you cannot. Two, identity crisis in terms of individuality. My own individuality. When I discussed Kamala Das's an introduction, I meant by identity crisis her own individuality. कि मैं एक इंडिविजुअल हूँ क्या? मैं इंडिविजुअल कैसे हूँ? मेरे जैसे तो सब हैं. इज़िकियल की एक बहुत सुंदर कविता है in Hymns and Darkness, where he says, I am the Guru and I am the Shishya. I have a key that can, I have several keys that can unlock no locks. मेरी कोई आइडेंटिटी ही नहीं. I cannot stress myself as an individual. So basically, in literature, when you speak of identity, it means asserting your individuality. But in Indian scenario, identity crisis can be seen at multi levels.
Sir.
In fact, Indianism is our identity now. You know, the major difference in the colonial, that is pre-independence and post-independence poetry, and specifically in poetry after modernist aesthetic is challenged. After the modernist aesthetic is challenged, our pride is our roots. We have realized, Rashmi, in all walks of life, in all aspects of literature, if you see, the Indian knowledge systems have been glorified, promoted, accepted. I will just like to quote one thing. Anita Nair is a leading journalist. She was asked in an interview, what is your idea of feminism? Now, feminism is a Western theory. It is an established concept, man-woman equality. And Anita Nair said, my concept of feminism is very different. My concept of feminism is in my Indian background. I will not go into the details of her commentary, but she beautifully, it's worth reading, in one of the newspapers it was published. My concept of feminism is not that I'm fighting and then only I can establish my dominance. I don't want to assert my dominance. I want to establish my identity. Acceptance of my identity. This is not even Virginia Woolf wanting a space. This is much more than that. That in my Indian background, acceptance of my identity is what my idea of feminism is. Ulysses wrote a poem जिसमें the first stanza deals with feminism, कि भाई feminism क्या है? And in the second stanza, the poet says, I know Anna, that is her own sister, who maintains her kitchen garden and cooks delicious dishes, and she's a feminist.
So now, if there is no more question, so Indian English literature, पहले मैं आपको बता दूं कि before 3 years, before this syllabus was revised, there was only one paper. There was also optional paper, 304E, right? But when I was doing my research, PhD research, तब मैंने इंडियन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर पे ही था, खास करके उसमें, तो मैंने इन सभी पोएट्स के बारे में पढ़ा, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम बेरोज़ द दत्त फैमिली. तब मुझे पता लगा इन डिटेल, कुछ के तो मैंने नाम भी नहीं सुने थे, और उन लोगों की पोएट्री और ये सब पढ़ा, क्योंकि जब हम, यानी इतने सालों में जब मैं भी पढ़ा था, इवन MA, तो उस वक्त भी सिर्फ टैगोर साहब एंड श्री अरविंद. यस यस optional paper, yes. So I thought at that time. Yes. So तब मैंने सोचा मैम कि this thing should be discussed, कि ये तो होना चाहिए इंडियन पेपर्स और इंडियन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर के. तो बोर्ड की जब मीटिंग हुई थी सिलेबस रिविजन की, और तब हमने डिस्कस किया एंड एवरीबॉडी वेलकम एंड एक्सेप्टेड भी आ गया. और इस तरह से आप लोग अब 3 से 4 पेपर इंडियन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर फाउंडेशन से लेके पूरा आप लोग पढ़ सकते हैं. और आप लोगों को भी अब हमें लाइक वी आर सेटिस्फाइड फ्रॉम आवर साइड एज टीचर्स कि यहाँ से जब बच्चे जा रहे हैं, तो नॉट ओनली ब्रिटिश लिटरेचर, नॉट ओनली द ब्रिटिश ऑथर्स, बट दे ऑल्सो कम टू नो अबाउट द इंडियन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर, व्हिच इज ह्यूज. आई मीन इतना बड़ा हेरिटेज है, हमारा कल्चर है, उन सब के बारे में जानने को मिलता है. तो वी आर हैप्पी फ्रॉम आवर साइड. Now feedback from teachers. Shivam, do you want to add something or you want to say something? Okay. So let's just complete today's session, and I would like to invite Ashwin for a word of thanks. Before a word of thanks, I would like the student to give the feedback about today's lecture, because feedbacks give feedbacks keep us motivated for every day. Is there anyone? Just come quickly. Come. English, Gujarati, Hindi, किसी भी language में चलेगा आपका feedback, ठीक है? If anyone next, कोई भी हो तो फटाफट आ जाइए. First of all, introduce yourself, college name, and then feedback.
મારું નામ છે મેહુલ સોલંકી. હું સ્વામિનારાયણ આર્ટ કોલેજમાંથી આવું છું. મને આજે પરિવાર ખૂબ જ આનંદ થયો છે આ લેક્ચર અટેન્ડ કરવાથી. અને થોડું દુઃખ પણ છે, બાબત છે કે આપણું જે લિટરેચર છે, ઇન્ડિયન લિટરેચર, એને આપણે ભણાવવામાં નથી આવ્યું. અને ફોરેન કન્ટ્રી જે લિટરેચર છે આપણને વધારે સમય માટે ભણાવવામાં આવ્યું છે. જે અત્યારે આપણા જે શિક્ષકો છે એમને ઇન્ટ્રોડ્યુસ કર્યું છે, એ વાત જાણીને થોડો આનંદ થયો છે. અને થોડું લોકોને વધારે વિશે જાણવા મળશે ઇન્ડિયન લિટરેચર વિશે, એને એક થોડો ગર્વ થયો છે. આવા પ્રોગ્રામો બસ થતા રહે, મારી ઈચ્છા છે જેથી કરીને ઇન્ડિયન લિટરેચરને વધારે પ્રોત્સાહન મળે અને લોકો વધારે ઇન્ડિયન ઓરિજિનને વધારે ફોલો કરે, જેથી કરી યુનિટી બને ઇન્ડિયામાં અને દેશની પ્રગતિ.
Good morning, everyone. I am Urvish Rathidia from Bhavan's College. At first, I would like to thank GUETA team for organizing such a good lecture series for us. Yesterday, one of my friends, she's from economics, she told this should be organized for us as well. So I felt lucky that it is organized for us. So, and about today's session, Swati ma'am has covered all the topics, all the sub-points, considering background points. Yesterday, ma'am told that we should also consider non-literary texts to understand literature well, because that background of that period determines and it helps us understand the context of author of that time, what he wanted to say. So, considering the background, examples, sub-points that helped us understand well yesterday as well as today. So, it will definitely help us in writing essays, topic essays in 316, and as it is our last year, and these marks will also determine our future line. So, it will really help. I would really thank from bottom of my heart to GUETA team and all the professors connected. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Jessica Jadhav. I am from Arts College. आज का लेक्चर हमारे लिए बहुत ही फायदेमंद था। जैसे कि मैम ने हमें बहुत सारी जो हमें पता भी नहीं थे इंग्लिश पोएट्री के बारे में, वो सारे थिंग्स हमें बताए। जैसे कि डायस्पोरा, आज तक मैंने मतलब इसके बारे में कभी डिटेल्स नाम सुना था, बट इसके बारे में मुझे ज़्यादा पता नहीं था। तो आज मुझे उस बारे में बहुत कुछ पता चला। मैम ने बहुत डिटेल में उसे बताया हमें, उसके लिए थैंक यू मैम। थैंक यू ऑल।
Hello, good morning everyone, and thank you for giving a chance second time. I am Swati from Sri Swaminarayan Arts College. Today's session is a very good because I learn about our Indian poet. When I was studying in the Gujarati medium, so I just thought about I want to choose English subject, but I will not get about knowledge of our Indian culture and Indian poets regarding. But now I got about the information of the Indian poet, so I feel proud, and I also want to be a Indian poet with India from India. So I would like to say just I am feeling very proud from this session. Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. So, Professor, for a wonderful session. It was very helpful for us. And one thing I want to mention here that it is very easy for us to remember the names of English poets and writers compared to Indian. We know very less name of our Indian poets and writers. As we can see, I just really didn't know about the Anika Nair. Ma'am explained it very well, and I get to know more about the Indian English poets and writers. We were more towards the British writers than the Indian, and but avoiding the Indians and focusing more towards the English writer. And remember their name, their achievement, ignoring our Indian writers and poets. They also achieved very good position in the world right now. We can see. And thank you, ma'am, for explaining it very well. We use it in our exam for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, students. Thank you for this active interest and feedback that you all have given. It's really inspiring for us. As you all said that it was almost a kind of a new enlightenment about Indian poetry and Indian literature as such, as Nitesh Bhai said, and we all agree that we did not have any choice when we were students to study about Indian literature as such, right? But then it's the scholarship, it's the research, it's the interest of professors like Nitesh Bhai and our own scholarly teacher Swati, who found that something is missing, isn't it? And they revived the tradition of learning and teaching English literature in English as such. So your lecture, Swati, works as a reference. It's a reference point for students. Reference point समझते हैं? Starting जहाँ से आप क्यों लेते हैं, link लेते हैं आगे जाने के लिए. So it will work as a reference point. You can go further. यहाँ से कहाँ आगे जाना है, जैसे आप सब ने कहा कि इंडियन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में आगे पढ़ना है, इंडियन आगे करना है, तो कैसे आगे बढ़ना है? So you refer back to her speech, her talk again and again, and find out cues for it. I mean, having a proper perspective with all the details of history that she has given. So you have a kind of Swati was almost already एक framework है हमने तुमने तैयार करी है पूछे कि भाई आगे लिखते you should go ahead if you want to know more about Indian poetry written in English. So that is a great contribution that you should acknowledge as a student. And और ज़्यादा कहूँ तो teachers like Swati, then they work for it and now they forward the pattern to you. अब आपके हाथ में, अब आगे इसको आप ले जाइए. When you do your masters, when you study further, see how more you can add to this area. आप अपने research से कितना आगे बढ़ेंगे और क्या क्या नया ढूंढ कर लाएंगे. So that's how it continues. That's how the tradition of scholarship and research goes ahead. So hope that some of you will take it further and add to the existing knowledge which Swati has given to us today. So Swati, thank you so much for taking us seriously, doing all the effort to just answer questions. I'm reading the limitation of time. You've been able to open the treasure about Indian poetry to us. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and coming today. We look forward. There are students of Sem 4 and Sem 2 as well, and they would be able to see and listen to you once again next time in the next series of lectures. Thank you so much.